Welcome everybody to another episode of Micah Spotlight. I am here with the voice of Monster Jam, and also he's the voice of my childhood. Uh, he's now Monster Jam Hall of Fame inductee, legendary Scott Douglas. Thank you so much for being on the show. Like, how are you, man?
Oh, it's a pleasure. Glad to be here. Looking forward to this. It's all
Yeah.
all open. Just whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. I love it.
All right, let's start with you first.
Okay.
Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but lived most of my life in southern Indiana, just north of Louisville. So that's kind of where I really got a lot of things started. It's where I went to school, and I actually got into radio and television in Kentucky, and then ended up transitioning over to working at racetracks. And we built a track back in 1988. I didn't build it. I was hired by the people who built Louisville Speedway. So I moved into working in motorsports full time at that point, still doing some radio and TV stuff when I could. And it was there that we got connected with the folks who are now the company that runs Monster Jam. And so while working at the racetrack and then running monster truck events back then, just met a lot of people, and they needed some people to talk on a microphone, and I was more than happy to do it. So kind of one door leads to another, like most people in life. You never see one coming sometimes, and I certainly, of course, there weren't anything like monster trucks around when I was a kid, so it's not like it was a lifelong dream, but it was always a dream and a goal to be somewhere in the world of TV, radio, broadcasting, and then as you get into those kind of things, you find there are some other opportunities. And for me, motorsports became the big opportunity, and that's where it's gotten.
Nice, man. So when you said that you started in, what was it? So you went to school for TV broadcasting, correct? Where did you go to?
Well, I went to what you would call a trade school now after high school, just knocking around with some odd jobs, but I'd always had an interest, and I was able to find a small school there. It was called the Louisville School of Broadcasting. It was just run by a school that was created by a guy who made his life in the radio and TV business. So you got all the inside. We used facilities at the University of Louisville, so we were working on actual equipment, and I was able to step right from there into a job as your standard radio DJ, playing records, and they were records back then. We actually queued up the vinyl and played it. You don't see those around much anymore.
Yeah, the other day I was with my friend Mason's house, and he pulled out a vinyl, and I was like, "What?" Because I'm still pretty young too. So how was life growing up, though?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was back in southern Indiana. It's a nice area. Louisville's a nice city in that it's not too big, yet it's got a lot of the big city things to do. Whether it's a good arts community, a lot of great sports. I've always been a big college sports fan. The University of Louisville being right there especially in basketball, is a big deal. So it's great. There's always fun stuff to do, and a lot of good folks, and just enjoyed that part of it. It's right on the Ohio River. Get out and do a little boating every now and then. So it was a cool place to grow up.
Yeah, because I'm actually from Cincinnati, so.
Been there many times. I'm a big Reds fan too. I'm an Indians fan, but I'm a Reds fan. I'd never transferred over to the Bengals. I grew up in Cleveland, so I'm a Browns, Cavs, Indians guy. But when I moved to Louisville, the influence of the Cincinnati Reds there, and I'm a huge baseball fan, and that's one of the influences for me as a broadcaster. Listening to Marty Brennaman, the longtime Cincinnati, there's a Hall of Famer for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I love the Reds. Been up to the ballpark there many times, and enjoy watching them. And we've had some really good Monster Jam events in the Cincinnati area for years.
Yeah, I was actually wanting to get to that. The first time that I saw you was actually on Speed. And so I used to go to the US Bank Arena back in the day, and you were never announcing there. So as a kid, I thought, only Scott only worked the big events, the stadium events. So the first time I actually saw you in person, it was actually at Paul Brown. Do you remember coming to Paul Brown Stadium?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that it was a first shot for us there. It was interesting because we'd always drawn good crowds and done well at US Bank Arena. So in some markets, they tried to add stadiums and arenas, and they tried it there. I vaguely remember the event. I was there for it. I know that, and it was kind of cool to be that close to home for a big stadium event. So yeah, I remember being there, and I did do US Bank Arena a couple of times, but it was it's always been in the winter months, And with Monster Jam, like this year, we have 8 different tours. So when I was a touring host or announcer, there may be 8 events going on at a weekend. So there are a lot of places that I actually didn't get to. But over the years, the schedule flips around to where I think most markets I've been in at least once. So yeah, and US Bank Arena I did a couple of times.
Okay, so when you say 8 different tours, are you specifically assigned to one tour? And that's
Yeah,
what you would do?
we have teams. It wasn't back in the day, but since my job now is as the casting and performer training manager, so I work with all the tours. And now
Okay.
what we've gotten our system down to where when the tour goes out, it goes out as a group, if you will. So let's take Stadium Tour Green, which is what I saw in Jacksonville last week. So those
Okay.
three hosts, Scott Jordan, Allie Krings, and Casey Gagliardi, go with that tour each week, all the way up to Monster Jam World Finals. After World Finals over the summer, then it's not as much the tour model, as you may see some different hosts and announcers, some different trucks, some different drivers. But from January 1 up until May 2nd and 3rd with Monster Jam World Finals, when it comes to Orlando, those are tours. The drivers and athletes are competing for points. They're competing for the champion gets an automatic bid to World Finals. And so that all stays on a tour. And so the hosts and announcers do stay on a tour. When I was doing it, it kind of got more my assignments and hit a stretch where to be able to do what we were doing on television, I would also be the live event host or live event announcer wherever television was recording the show that week. So
Okay.
quite often, some venues, more traditionally big selling historic venues, the Astrodome and the NRG Stadium in Houston,
Yeah.
always seemed to be one we would do on television, and so that was generally always one that I would at least host one of the events live. We normally do 3 events, I think, in Houston each year. So that's an example. So a lot of those would come back up. We've always had several Florida events that we would televise. And so that used to determine my schedule more than anything else. Now it's wherever the tour goes. Our people go wherever their tour goes.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Now, when back in the day, or now actually, um, you said that you. Oh, hold on. Sorry, kind of lost my train of thought. So when I see you on Speed, you would be on the floor and then you'll be commentating. So
Yeah.
you do everything. But where do you commentate at? Where's your station?
That was done in those days. That was done in what we call a voiceover. So the logic in having me there for the live event was that we could record several things that would go into the television show. And actually, we would start the show, the TV show, live in front of the house. So the people in the stands would hear what was going to end up on the television show. So we would put together certain pieces. And then you're taking a 2-hour event and condensing it to an hour. So that's where the real magicians, the editors and the directors come in. They get it into a nice, tight, hopefully entertaining 1-hour show. When it's put together, I would then walk into a booth and just call it like I was watching it live. So
Even after you saw it.
yeah, yeah, and that's what helped too. I knew the event, but yet was able to react. So I had already called it in real time live. So it was really just kind of redoing in the voiceover booth what I did live on the ground. That's what it made sense, and hopefully that's what was allowed me to really know the event and hopefully bring a lot of insight to it in our coverage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the way that you sounded on TV, it sounds like, you're looking at it in real time. Does that take away the surprise factor?
No, not really. I mean, it was my job to be able. I think in some ways it kind of helped to know it is coming.
Yeah.
The first time that a Monster Jam truck ever backflipped in competition, and this is fresh on my mind because we just had the 10th anniversary of it in Jacksonville. It happened in Jacksonville. It was a televised program. When I was hosting it live, nobody knew it was coming. It was a pretty well-kept secret by Cam McQueen and the Nitro Circus team. And so when they did it, it was one of those moments where I literally put my microphone in my pocket. The crowd was going crazy. And as a host or announcer, one of the things I teach people is if the crowd's screaming and going crazy, just be quiet. There's nothing else you could do. That's what you want them to do. And so at that moment in the live event, it may have been 3-4 minutes that I didn't say a word and just let the reaction in the moment happen. But you can't do that, or you don't want to do that on television. So I was prepared for it so that when it happened on TV, my reaction hopefully still sounded fresh and enthusiastic, because it was such a monumental moment to have that move brought into Monster Jam that I think hopefully I was able to discuss it a little more and really capture the history and the magnitude of that moment, because I did know it was coming.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So your schedule back then, walk me through your schedule for the week, like a week in Scott Douglas when you were full time. Are you still full time?
No, I'm actually a full-time employee for Feld Entertainment now. So my entire job is auditioning, casting, and training anyone who speaks on a microphone. Now, that, of course, includes the 22 Monster Jam hosts that we have, but it also includes our 4 Supercross hosts. And what surprises a lot of people is over the last year, I probably worked with 50 different Disney on Ice hosts, because Disney on Ice is another Feld Entertainment property that uses live hosts to weave in between the different stories that the skaters are telling on the ice. And we do it all quite a bit the same way. So every day with me is working with hosts now. Back when I was actually on the microphone, that was a job where I would have other work. I would do other things. I was still doing morning drive radio in Louisville. I was still helping out at racetracks. In weeks that I wasn't doing Monster Jam, I was the track announcer at Iowa Speedway for their IndyCar and NASCAR races. I was a track announcer at the Kentucky Speedway right down the road from you there in Cincinnati, right, in northern Kentucky. So, yeah, so it was putting together as many things as possible, just trying to make a living, with Monster Jam being most of what I did. And then about 7-8 years ago, it was decided that they wanted a full-time person, and they decided that they made me offer's not the right word, but they came to me with the idea that going forward, and as the sport continues to expand and going all over the globe now, that I could be more valuable by hosting, training, and finding new talent. And I enjoy what I do now more than ever. Maybe miss being on the mic once in a while, but to see the success of the people we work with, and to see how much the fans are enjoying as we evolve as a sport and as a company, it's pretty exciting. And then to think that in the last year, I've trained hosts in South Africa, Japan, China.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. It is Europe. It's just amazing.
Being in the entertainment field, a lot of you guys, you travel all the time.
Yeah.
What's your travel schedule like? Is it always hard to, not to be away from home?
Well, I didn't travel quite as much when I had younger children at home. So once the kids grow out and you move a little more in life to where you're not raising a young family, then it becomes a lot easier to have a more hectic travel schedule. So the timing has always worked out for me. I was a lot more grounded 30 years ago. Now the flexibility to pretty much go wherever, and it is my job now. So when it comes on the schedule that I need to be, again, when I needed to take 3 weeks to go to South Africa earlier last year, I did. And that's one of the enjoyable things. I do like to travel, like to see, although we're always working, it's not like it's this glamorous sightseeing kind of thing, but it is cool to go to different places and be involved in other cultures and try to see if I can find food to eat, because I'm kind of picky, and some of these places scare me a little bit.
What's the weirdest encounter of food that you had?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Because I'm not going to encounter much of it, because if somebody tries to tell me they're putting octopus on my plate, I'm not going to eat it. I'll go over. I don't want to knock any nationalities, but there was some catering in one of the early countries that we did, and now we're going back to 2005 when Monster Jam was just starting to go overseas. Mm-hmm. And the original idea was they would give all of us folks in Monster Jam a little culture, and all the food was very local, and a lot of these heavy sauces that were strangely created, and we weren't sure what the meats were. And for the most part, a lot of us didn't eat for that first weekend, and then we learned how to find things that we could eat. And our company's done a great job also in realizing it. We went to China, and they had all couldn't identify a thing. And the first day, the caterer put out all this stuff, and not too many people were eating it. But he had a fryer that was probably it was a little one basket fryer if you were like at McDonald's. And so he'd do like a fryer, a basket full of French fries, and he'd throw a basket of chicken wings out. And all of a sudden, bang, those were gone. And so every day he would come in early because he just had that one fryer, that one basket, and he would literally cook chicken wings and French fries all morning. And that's what everybody would want to eat at lunchtime. There were a few that would experiment with the egg rolls and things like that. But yeah, so it's funny in each place. But I tend to not, I can be adventurous on a sightseeing tour. But then again, there's a limit to me there too, is we're in Cape Town, South Africa, and went up in a park. And the baboons start coming out of it's their feeding time in the afternoon, and they don't have a fear of. They'll come right up to you. Now they generally won't mess with you, but they'll take something out of your hands. If you have any food on, they're just gonna snatch it right out of your hands. That was a little bit nerve wracking. I said I got all my nature fill that day. Take me back to the hotel.
That's hilarious. Speaking of traveling, the World Finals started traveling now because it was always at Sam Boyd. Why was that? Do you know why that changed?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I think that we don't even know what the future. I'm not sure. Some people probably know. I don't know what the future of that stadium is, with the new building being built for the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. So there are things on the ground there. But I think for Monster Jam, and I can just speak for what I see because I'm not in the decision-making process, but Las Vegas and Sam Boyd Stadium were so important over the last 20 years to elevating this sport and giving us a marquee event. But once we were able to build it to the event where people were traveling to come to it, it makes it a very valuable property to communities that want to bid for things like that. Now, I'm not saying we're on a plane with the Super Bowl or WrestleMania, but it's the same kind of an idea and a design that we will get support and be able to take the fans who love the World Finals and just give them plenty of notice, try to come up with the best, most reasonable travel packages we can, and literally we could take it anywhere. The sky's the limit at this point. So a lot of it's working with local communities, who wants to support the event, where our fans want to go. I think one of the real reasons to take Orlando first when we moved out of Las Vegas was the idea that it's a real travel destination. And so for a lot of families, and obviously the Monster Jam fan base is families, you rarely see anybody that doesn't have two kids in tow, which is cool. But to give them this event and then encourage them to come down, it's a lot of people are on spring break or close to it. Come on down, check out Disney World, check out Epcot, and then, build it around the Monster Jam World Finals. Where it goes from here, I think you'll start to see it rotate. We're doing 2 years in Orlando, but I think the plan is that it will alternate on an annual basis going forward. But those plans will be announced. There has not been an announcement made for 2021 yet. I would assume that's coming reasonably soon, but haven't heard it yet.
Okay. Is the Monster Jam World Finals your favorite event?
There's no doubt. I mean, there's things happen there, the stories there, some of the most incredible moments, the flair for the spectacular. The idea, and it just started almost accidentally, that we were going to start doing these elaborate encores after the competition was over and show people things that they've never seen. All those kind of things have built it. But I think the thing that really builds it, it's like a reunion every year. You see fans that you have seen throughout the year in other events and who've been coming for year after year, and they're almost like family. It's the best of the best. Everybody wants to win. You're always going to see it. Again, you go to the Super Bowl, you expect to see, Patrick Mahomes rise to the occasion. When you come to the Monster Jam World Finals, you see a guy like Tom Benz 12 times able to rise to the level of winning the world championship. Yeah, it's the best of what we got, and it's the most fun. There's no doubt that's number one on the list.
Absolutely. Do you have a memory that stands out to you of your whole career? What I mean by that is that I remember on Speed, I think the first time I think it was Gravedigger and Iron Outlaw, and they were doing a race, and Dennis flipped the truck over in the stands. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, he landed on the wall protection there.
On the wall protection, yeah.
And then Lindsey Wink was in Iron Outlaw and was aware enough to slam it into reverse because the truck was coming back down and would have landed on top of him. I remember, that was in the old Pontiac Silverdome. And those kind of really vivid moments will stand out. I think what stands out to me, though, are more the moments that really grab emotion and electricity and things that just come quickly to mind. like at World Finals 11 in 2010, for the only time, that was the first time, it's the only time it's ever happened, that we'd gone through the season and we go through the whole World Finals, and you get down to the final race, and it was the only time that Tom Menson, Maximum Destruction, and Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger raced each other for the World Championship. And it was one of those times when, again, I would say I didn't have to say very much. The whole place was buzzing. It was electric. It was what the people for a decade had come hoping to see. And to see that moment play out, and Dennis Anderson actually won that one, that was just amazing to be a part of. So those are the kind of things that come to me, the things that captivate and not only grab our audience and our fans, but I think elevate the sport.
Right, absolutely. Do you now is the Triple Threat series that for the arena shows? But when I was going, it was not that at all. It was like you had a wheelie competition, then a donut, and then you would have maybe ATVs or motocross for intermission, and then finish it with racing and freestyle. Do you like this concept of the triple threat series better than how it originally was?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's the evolution and a lot of thought, a lot of process planning, went into the design of Triple Threat. But the other thing that went into it was a lot of evaluating of talent, a lot of looking for the right fit, because there are a lot of really good Monster Jam drivers, top-level drivers, who could not compete in Triple Threat because of the demands physically, rather than just driving a truck. That's a special talent in itself. But then to get out of that truck, get on an ATV, which is a totally different type of, just they call it arm pump, just the way the strength and the muscles it requires to be able to handle those ATVs. And then the Speedster is a whole nother different type of vehicle. So the athletes, and then also the other thing that I think made that happen was the creation and the development of Monster Jam University, powered by UNOH, which really trains everybody, but has specifically for the last 5 years been the real training ground for Triple Threat athletes. And when they go through their training up there with Tom Menson and his team that trains the athletes at MJU, they come out of there ready to go and to be able to entertain fans in all these different types of different competitions, and it's a real test for them. I love the intensity of it and how talented you have to be able to master all three of those vehicles. And some of the top, Colton Eichelberger and Tyler Meniga and Tristan England, some of these guys, they have mastered all three of the skills. Blake Granger's another great test because he came with an ATV background, so he was locked in. It's still tough to beat him on an ATV, but what he did was develop his other skills around that to where now he is a threat to win an entire championship.
Yeah. So how does a person get into the MJU?
Well, it becomes, there's different ways, but it all goes through the Feld Entertainment. There's a department, obviously, a big department that handles all the Monster Jam trucks, builds the trucks, there's the shop, but there's also part of that department that deals specifically with the drivers. And so in some cases, someone will know someone and they'll recommend, and those folks will take a look at them. And if looks like they're a good candidate, they make it a shot at MJU. We have a program now with the University of Northwestern Ohio, which sponsors MJU and sponsors Monster Jam. Each year, someone gets the opportunity going through their classes to actually come down and get a tryout at MJU. Some people will just be aggressive and reach out through Feld Entertainment's website, and everything that comes in, there are people who look at it, and if somebody's asking and inquiring about being a Monster Jam driver, it gets forwarded to the proper people. And then normally they'll ask you to submit some audition material and resumes and what you're about and why you want to do it. There have been some people that way who have then gotten a follow-up and a chance to come see if they were the right fit. So there's a lot of ways to do it if somebody really wants to.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember is Digger's Dungeon. Is that still a thing?
Still there. Yeah, Dennis still has that down in Currituck near Kill Devil Hills on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's a tourist thing. People will go down there. A lot of people just drive up just to see it. There's a lot of history there, and just pretty good food. Digger's Diner sits right next door to it. That's still open all the time.
They have a diner? I didn't even know that.
Dennis's family actually, and a lot of friends and family actually run the diner, and it's a great place to come down and have a meal and go over and check out all the history of the dungeon. But it's still there. Yeah, yeah,
So you've been, right?
yeah.
Okay, okay. My next question is, when you were on tour, is there, besides Vegas, is there any other city that you really like to go to?
Wow. I mean, I really enjoy the experience of so many places. You know, the ones that I probably enjoyed the most were for reasons other than Monster Jam, like Houston, where I had a lot of family. All my brothers and sisters would come to the events for years, and that was always a cool place to go. When I got to do Cleveland, one of my last events that I actually was on a microphone, but then also going back as a trainer. Um,
Hmm.
After the Cavaliers had won the only championship in my lifetime for a Cleveland team, to be back in that building was very cool. So it's the ones that have other along because I know the Monster Jam event's gonna be great wherever we go. So it's
Right.
the cities and the buildings. I always love going to New Orleans just because I love the New Orleans experience and the
Hmm.
food and all the entertainment opportunities there, all the great music, things like that. So yeah, it's just different places have appeal for different reasons. Because at the end of the day, when we're going for Monster Jam, we know we're going to go in and put on a great show. We've got great fans, and it's the things that are around it, I think, that probably make certain cities or certain events stand out.
Hmm. When you one thing that I always love to watch is to watch the stadium or arena transformation. And I'll go from a basketball game to monster trucks or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Do you see that a lot? I mean, obviously you go to the events, but you see that a lot. Are you there when it all happens or
Not
no?
not normally, not normally. That those guys work long hours. Many times they're building those tracks overnight. It is but what's amazing about it, I do know enough about it and have worked with them enough to appreciate not only the hard work, but the expertise, the professionalism, and literally the science. They have down our teams that do track construction know what their window is if they're coming over and going to cover a field. They know how long that they have to get the field down, to get the track down, so they won't start to build it until they get inside their window. And then as soon as the event's over, then they know they have to get everything off of it because there's a certain amount of time that the field can survive. We can cover it the way we cover it, get everything off, and then the field's still fine. It's it's an amazing process. It really is, and a lot of times we'll because it takes so many hours. The video teams will be able to put together time lapses of how a building will transform from saying having a basketball court down to taking the plywood up and then coming in and putting down everything we need to put down or covering a soccer stadium or a football field. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And again, it's a testament to a lot of years, a lot of learning, and a lot of really, all these tracks are designed on these things that are way over my head. These AutoCAD programs and the actual development of the angles of the ramps and how they're going to build them and how the racetracks, how wide they have to be in the turns, where the turning poles will go. All that's really scientific now.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like commentating or working with Mark Schrader?
Mark, Mark is always as a guy who's always happy, always got a smile on his face, and has just a pure passion and love for this industry. And
Hmm.
he's lived it. He's been in the seat. It's always great. I never had any aspirations of being a driver. I considered myself a professional broadcaster and wanted to bring those talents, but I couldn't take a fan and give them a firsthand account of what it's actually like to have the hands on that steering wheel and watch that green light. And that's what Mark did so well. He communicated with such a passion. It was just fun to work with him, and it was always a blast to be around him. And he's just a great human being. So it was those were fun years working with Mark. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could definitely tell through you guys'
Yeah.
commentary. It's like you guys really enjoyed working with each other. Now, I see that Monster Jam now is like starting to get away from crush cars. I don't really see them as much as I used to. What?
Yeah, yeah, and that's there are a lot of reasons involved, but one of the main ones is the idea that what today's fan wants is a lot more higher in the air, spectacular moves, and being able to design and mold dirt ramps. You're not going to mold a car. It is what it is, and it's going to smash down, and you're going to have it's not going to stay up. And when you build ramps to look for some to allow them to do these amazing moonwalks and poppers and different things that are being done now, those have to be built precisely and with certain angles and certain bumps to them to create the reaction of the chassis and the truck once it hits it. So it's just become part of the event that creating the ramps, using the dirt, molding them specifically for the jumps and the stunts and the racetracks that we're looking for has just become the way to go. There are a lot of other reasons. I can tell you one reason. This is not, and I don't know if this is, I can go back to days as a racetrack promoter. What we saw, my gosh, 20 years ago, was that the auto industry, as it moved and got more modern and built lighter, different types of cars, we started running out of enough cars for demolition derbies. Now, they're still finding them out there, but they're not as plentiful as they used to be, just because those old steel body cars were the ones that could really hold up if you were going to be, say, in a demolition derby. So there's all kinds of factors that go into certain decisions like that. But for our sport, the ability to create these ramps that are designed specifically for Monster Jam trucks to perform on is best for the fans, to get the best event that's possible for them and to be the biggest test for our athletes and drivers.
Yeah. Now I see you guys say athletes and drivers now. Like, it used to be drivers and now they're called athletes. Now the change was because of the triple threat series?
Yeah, it was. And I've used that term over the years quite a bit because, and I did the same thing in NASCAR. I always felt like motorsports competitors were often not given enough credit just because they weren't, bench pressing 400 pounds, or some probably could.
Yeah.
But, the typical athlete is the football player, the basketball player to some people. But there are a whole lot of athletic talents that just run a different range. And I've always felt like the motorsports competitors fit in that. When we went to the Triple Threat Series, it just made it really easy to talk about the athleticism, because they were, going to IMG Academy and training and doing all this physical fitness to get ready and to get ready mentally for what they had to do with 3 different vehicles. So, yeah, that made it really natural to go that way. But I've always considered them athletes. Drivers is more specific, so it's easier to say, hey, he's a driver, but I've always called them athletes as well.
Okay. Now, in 2011, you won the Leadership Award, and with your speech, you said that a fan who had a speech problem, the way that he was able to work on that was through imitating you. When you heard that news, how did that make you feel?
Well, there's that's not the only story like that. It's amazing, and that's one of the things about Monster Jam that has always kept me so passionate about it, and that has always been the top priority of making ourselves, whether it's a driver, athlete, a host, available to the fans, spending time with the fans, appreciating them, but also to seeing what, for whatever reason, the sport means to so many people. I know that we have a lot of different groups that we work with. Now we're very committed to our campaign to raise money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. That's a big one. Make-A-Wish has always been a big one for us. So we have so many of them. What I've seen, though, over the years, and I don't know if there's anything scientific to it, I can only tell you what I've seen, is that there are a lot of kids who are autistic, who seem to be, and I don't know if it's the big trucks, I don't know if it's the noise, if it's the colors or what it is, but it's so cool to see them drawn to it and start to come out of their shells being around Monster Jam. And I've had a couple who literally, their families have talked about, that's what got them to start talking, was watching what we were doing on Monster Jam. There's no way, there's just no way. I mean, you can't even put into words what that means or what kind of to have that kind of impact on somebody. I don't think any of us ever expected it, but I know all of us really, really appreciate it. I was just with Dennis Anderson this past weekend. We were taping some interviews, and I think this is right, and if it's wrong, I apologize, but he's up there in terms of the number of kids, Make-A-Wish kids, who have wanted to see him or have come down to Digger's Dungeon. I think I heard once that only John Cena has done more Make-A-Wish visits than Dennis Anderson.
Wow.
So that comes from that. that comes from the heart. That's something he loves to do. They'll just drive up to Digger's Dungeon. You talk about Digger's Dungeon, he'll be there and meet them, and he'll take them around. He's been going to take those kids out in his boat and just go around on the Outer Banks for a day. And this is the biggest star we have in the sport. So that's one of the cool things that it's hard to put into words, but that makes this special. It's why I've always loved being a part of it.
Yeah, every time I see you in an interview or anything, you always speak highly of Dennis. What does Dennis mean to you and his impact on the sport?
Well, there's no question. There's a reason he's the first one announced for the Monster Jam Hall of Fame. There was no question that it starts with Dennis. It's just one of these stories that can only happen in the United States of America, Mike. It's a guy who never saw it coming, who never went looking for it. He loved motorsports. He thought his goal in life, he was telling me, was to work on the farm and have the big name patch on that showed he was the boss and have the big key ring hanging off the side of his belt. Wow. And so he's working for these guys, and they started, souping up some trucks, and the boss's son is giving him a hard time because he's got this old jalopy truck, and he looks at him and says, "I'll take this truck and dig you a grave." And so all of a sudden, everybody working there starts calling him the grave digger. How does that get started? And then as he gets going, he's creative and smart enough and got enough passion for what he's doing. But a lot of what he created was just out of necessity. He wanted to do this. He was a little crazier than everybody else, and he had a flair for entertaining people. In the days when the monster truck racing started, they paid a purse just like most different racetracks do. And normally there's a big bonus on being the fast qualifier. I want to say back in the day, it may have been $750, which when he started, that's enough money maybe to get you to the next city. So he always came in with the goal that he had to get that fast qualifier bonus. Well, now about half the time he'd tear his truck up by getting the fast qualifier bonus. Well, he was also smart enough that he saw people like the whole gravedigger design and concept. He got some good artwork people to work with. And so he started making up T-shirts. Well, he needed to sell them. But he was out after qualifying. He would go back and negotiate with the promoters and say, "Listen, if you just let me after, you don't have to pay me anymore. But after the race is over, let me go out and just," and he came up with the term freestyle. "I'm just going to freestyle. I'll just hit it in." And the crowd went crazy. They bought all his T-shirts, and it starts to where it actually ended up becoming a competition. So his influence is undeniable, and it's so cool to see his legacy continue as his kids are at the top of the game. I mean, right now, Ryan Anderson, Adam Anderson in the stadiums are the best in the business. Kristen is now the first ever female gravedigger driver, and Dennis will tell you that maybe the best of them all is his youngest son, Weston, who will be coming soon, probably in the next couple of years. So his influence just goes so far through the sport. And as I've seen it grow and seen it develop, the genesis of a lot of the popularity was Dennis. And then as others came in and as we worked in the rivalry with Tom, took it to another level. Yeah. From day one to today, there's only two people I've ever seen. Let me rephrase this. All the Monster Jam drivers are great about spending time and signing autographs. But when years and years ago, you wouldn't have that much of an opportunity today. But back in the day, a lot of the NASCAR guys would sign autographs, and we even would bring some of them in for special autograph sessions. And the one guy who would never let you would never stop with anybody in line. We always had to have a predetermined time, and then security wouldn't let anybody else get in the line. But it didn't matter how long the line was, he was going to sign every autograph, was Richard Petty. And the way he talked to people and made them feel special. I saw Garth Brooks in an autograph session do the same thing. That's what Dennis did and does to this day. Everybody feels special when they come up to see Dennis because he makes you feel like that you're the most important person there. You're coming to see him. He's the star. He knows he's nothing without those fans that follow him. And he uses that line. He thanks him for every nut and bolt on his truck and every shingle on his roof. The thing is, he means it. He's such a sincere person. There is not a phony bone in that body of his. And so that's why I have such an appreciation for Dennis and always enjoyed working with him. And, from a broadcaster's point of view, he's good television. He's going to do something spectacular. He's got that old country humor. He's going to say something crazy. Yeah. And it makes for good television. It makes your job a lot easier when you're sitting in my seat.
Do you remember the Thunder Nationals when that was a thing?
Oh yeah, 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 sure, yeah. And it was.
So
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Now I was just going to say that was a perfect example of one thing building to another to another. The Thunder Nationals was the first one of the first ways that promoters tried to bring Monster Jam or monster trucks to more people by going into smaller venues, maybe venues that wouldn't allow dirt in, and to be able to do events on concrete without that. And so that kind of evolved as the arena product continued to grow. So it was, yeah, it was, to me, it's like a real starting point to get us to where we're at today with the Triple Threat Series, because you start there, you learn, you develop, you try something new, and then and then a lot of this with buildings back in the days, a lot of them, and we experienced this overseas. A lot of them are real uncertain about bringing Monster Jam in and having it contested in a soccer stadium.
Okay.
But once you're able to show people how you do it, your process, and how what the Monster Jam people really specialize in is in coming in, doing the event, coming out, and having people show up Tuesday, never knowing we've been there. So these people, if they're going to have the opportunity to put this event on in their building, and and then know that after it's over, they just go back to what they normally do, it just adds to their ability to run their business as well. Because all these stadiums, whether it's concerts or this or that, it's hard to make a living off eight home football games a year. But when you can get 8 big National Football League home football games a year, or 9 or 10, maybe kind of preseason, but then add in a couple of Monster Jams, a few big concerts, this, that's how you make your business work. And that's how you keep people working too.
So the Thunder Nationals originated with the arenas not allowing dirt to be in the building?
Yeah, the original Thunder National concept, well, it may not have even been whether it was allowed. It may have been, okay, this makes more sense to not bring dirt. There's a big expense in bringing dirt into any building. And so at the end of the day, you're putting on events, but they all need to make money somehow.
You're right.
So there were some buildings where the layout, the business plan, if you will, made more sense not to have the dirt. And it created an opportunity to have a chance to bring monster trucks to some people who you might not have otherwise been able to come into that market had you not had a Thunder Nationals type of a format, which theoretically costs less money to produce, but was still in many cases bringing a lot of top names in there, a lot of guys. And there were guys who specialized in being able to do really cool stuff without dirt. Some of the best donuts you'll ever see are donuts that are done on concrete.
Right.
They're amazing. They're amazing. So there are guys that developed a knack for that and kind of really became standouts on that series. And it might not have carried over as well in a stadium, but boy, in Thunder National, even the Dennises and the Toms probably didn't want to take those guys on in their backyard.
Yeah, the first time I saw Thunder National was at the Nutter Center in Dayton, and Full Bore actually, I think that was the truck. Full Bore, yeah. Full Bore was doing a donut, and it really turned into a cyclone, and that was really nice. I've never seen that before, like on concrete. And so the first time I saw it on concrete, it was definitely like weird at first, but I really enjoyed the show, really.
Yeah.
Now, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm just kind of not agreeing with you, because it is, and that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about what we do, and about the people who are behind the scenes and make some really good decisions and come up with some really good ideas, is that when someone asked me, well, how can you do it in that hockey arena or in that basketball arena? I encourage them to come check it out, even though it may not be what they've seen on television with trucks 40 feet in the air. You're not going to do that with a scoreboard hanging up there. What you do though is this experience of on the senses, of the smells and the sounds. It's also much more vivid. You're so close to the trucks, even though we have all our safety holds in place and everything's built safe, and we don't sell a lot of seats to make sure that the fans aren't too close. You still feel like you're right there. It's such an intimate experience, as opposed to maybe being, in the top row of Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. And luckily they have big screens there, but you're much further removed. The experience in the arena, and that's what Thunder Nationals was all about, was really being able to get the up close and real excitement of these amazing machines.
Yeah. Now, excuse me, for do you remember so one of the best ones that I've seen was you guys used to have dinosaurs or eat cars and stuff. And one of my favorite ones was Galactron and Reptar. Do you remember them and stuff?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Do
I
you
remember.
do, do they still do their
Probably out there somewhere. It's everybody transitions through different things, and uh, in the Monster Jam product, and that was one of the things that Feld Entertainment has been really great about understanding and capturing is to make Monster Jam about our athletes, our machines, our drivers, and creating more competitions. The whole creation of the skills challenge and two-wheel skills comes about one from this desire to be able to have another legitimate good competition, but also because of what, especially these younger drivers, we're starting to do with trucks on just two wheels. Point being that, so in for Monster Jam, our event is all about that. But there's still a lot of other things out there, and I'd be surprised to hear that they weren't out there somewhere. I haven't seen the specific one you mentioned in a long time, but there's always going to be different types of novelty acts and those kind of things. If you build, say, a dinosaur or something like that, you're probably not going to have people come to the same place every year to see it. So you're always looking to expand where you can make some money and show off your creation. So yeah, there's a lot of them still out there. We just haven't worked with them for a few years.
Okay. Um, earlier you preached about, or earlier you talked about safety at the Monster Jam events. Explain what the RII is.
Well,
RII?
it it it's it's a remote ignition interrupter is the easy answer. But it was developed because again, you're dealing with very big machines, very powerful machines, and very limited vision machines.
Hmm.
So when you're sitting that high off the ground, and you remember some of the designs, especially some of the early crazier designs, and still some of them are tough to see out of, but there are some that the
Monster Mutt.
Monster Mutt, the vision is limited anyway. And now, where the safety for the driver has developed so much, I mean, once they strap on the head and neck restraints and all their belts, they're like this. They're not seeing a whole lot anyway, except what's
Hmm.
right in front of them. So, and they're so loud, you're not going to yell at somebody to stop if they're in peril or something's in peril. So it was developed very early on that the safest thing that the officials and the U.S. HRA sanctioning body could do was to be able to just, if anything looked like there may be a safety issue, just shut the truck off. And you don't have to
Hmm.
worry about the driver seeing it or knowing it. The officials shut it off. We can go down and explain it to them with the truck not moving or running, and then we can start up and fire when the track's clear or whatever the situation may be. It is a critical part of safety. Now, the safety for Monster Jam is huge again because of the nature of the beast, if you will. That goes to there's a whole department that does things, and there's a lot of technology that's been designed. The development of shocks and chassis and seats that literally are built to fit the body of the driver.
Hmm.
The whole head and neck restraints, all these things, and then it's a scientific process that the safety people go through as to how close anyone can be to where the trucks are. That's why you always see plastic around a Monster Jam event. Those seats
Right.
down close aren't going to be sold. Those are designated as safety hold areas. And then again, the other big thing about it is that ability of our highly trained officials to shut that truck off with the push of a button.
Okay. 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 Now, one driver who I haven't seen in a long time is Gary Porter. He's still around?
Oh, he's still around. Gary quit driving a couple of years ago, but I haven't seen Gary in a little bit either, but he'll still come out to an event here and there, and I hear, and yeah, he's one of the legends, and I don't know how the process is going to move forward, but you got to believe there's a day that Gary Porter joins the Monster Jam Hall of Fame. He has been such a part of it for so long, and you talk about a class act and a smart guy. Dennis will tell you when he and Gary were running up and down the roads together. Dennis was getting all the headlines, and he was, asking a loader to come over and scrape his truck up. Gary would make the
Hmm.
most money and drive his truck back onto his hauler every week. Gary figured it out pretty quick that there was a line that he could get to and be really fast and be really entertaining. But if he didn't go over it, he just drove his truck onto the hauler and went to the next show while Dennis was out there working in the middle of the night trying to fix his junk.
Yeah, yeah. So you're at Raymond James Stadium, and Dennis Anderson gets inducted, and then you find out that you're going to be inducted. What was your emotions like in that moment? You're very emotional, but what was that like?
Yeah, it was, and they, the people who put it all together, from the Feld family and all the executives who were a part of it, did a great job. First of all, there's been talk about Hall of Fame for several years, and it's just been kind of out there. Then all of a sudden in January, it was like, yep, the Hall of Fame is being created. It was just, here it goes. It's going to be announced. We're going forward with it. And it wasn't maybe within a week to 10 days that event you're talking about in Tampa was coming up. And they had arranged, my bosses had arranged to change my schedule for what seemed like legitimate purposes, to train one of our new pit reporters in Tampa. So, okay, I'm just going to be there. Well, then they asked me, said, listen, Dennis doesn't know that he's going to be the first inductee. We'd like you to do the interview with him. So all I was focused on was what was the most obvious thing in the world, that Dennis would be the first person to go in, not having any idea what would happen after that. So I was totally stunned, was the first part of the emotion. But then you spend, more than 30 years of your life involved with something. I think everybody knows I'm very passionate about Monster Jam. I love the sport, love the people around it, love the people in it. And then to get an honor like that, there's you really, people say you can't put it into words. There's nothing I can say that could accurately reflect what it means to me and what it meant to me in that moment. I think some of the pictures tell the story. There were some great ones that people took, and I appreciate. And now, we'll go forward and have the induction ceremony May 1st in Orlando, the night before World Finals.
Nice. That's kind of like a WrestleMania thing now. So it's like before the World Finals, like before WrestleMania, they had the Hall of Fame. So it's, just a little comparison.
It makes sense. That's going to be your biggest event. That's where your biggest fans are going to come in. And I don't think we use that necessarily as a model, but there's just a logic there that if you're going to do this annually, we already do World Finals annually. Really, for us, you would do it either there or you would do it in conjunction with the All-Star event in the fall. And it certainly makes more sense that it would be part of our biggest event, which is Monster Jam World Finals. So, I hear what you're saying, because it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah,
it does. Earlier, you talked about, being on TV and stuff like that. Now that you are, was it hard at first to adjust to, do you get nervous every time you have to go out in front of people, or you just got used to it? It just doesn't faze you anymore?
Well, that's interesting, because for the most part, you always get a little, whether it's the adrenaline or you want to call it some butterflies or anything. Anytime you're going to walk out in front of them. But from the first times that I did it, it was always very quickly channeled into really trying to do a great job, or do the best job that I could do. But I almost feel like if you don't have a little butterflies or have a little thing, something going on inside, maybe you don't care, and maybe you shouldn't do it. I just always consider that part, and that's what I tell the hosts I work with now. That's natural. You just can't let it get the best of you, and you've got to channel it into bringing an energetic, enthusiastic performance to what it is that you're going to do. So, but even the last few years that I went out there, it would always be, okay, it's go time. The excitement builds up, and it's a little bit of a nerves thing going on, but it's amazing how quickly it just locks into you, focused on doing your job.
Yeah. When I was watching you on Speed, the intro always said, "Who's ready for Monster Jam?" Like, that's like out there all the time. Did you say that at a specific event, and they just like used it on TV all the time, or?
Different things you just almost kind of fall into. Because remember, when we were starting, we were doing it as we went. There weren't. Now we have these incredible production teams and audio-visual managers and all the different things that add to what the host does. The early days, I might get a piece of paper that says, okay, we're going to do this first, do this second, do this third, and that'd be about it. I had to get out there and learn who the drivers were. And that's what I prided myself on doing, was looking for things that I could tell the fans that would make each one of them stand out and hopefully build Mark Schrader's fan base and build Dan Evans's fan base, and along with Dennis and Tom as they were doing their thing. So what it ended up was a situation where, as you tried to develop, we constantly looked for different things. And some of them, I'm not afraid to tell you, I would steal or borrow maybe from other things that I had seen, if it made sense. We've called Jim Kohler Mr. Excitement for years in Monster Jam, and it stuck. But, I didn't just have some wake up one day and say, wow, Mr. Excitement, because it does describe him perfectly. But NASCAR had a driver named Jimmy Spencer who had that nickname, and they were using it all the time. It's not trademarked. Jimmy Spencer was exciting. Jim Kohler was exciting. So we borrowed it and moved it over and used it and to me, they're both Mr. Excitement. So that statement, things like that. And then when you're a broadcaster, a sportscaster, Marty Brenneman has said this one belongs to the Reds for years. It's legendary. Yeah. So if you get things that motivate people and that click, you can make them kind of a signature. And so the Who's Ready for Monster Jam was just something that I started doing that stuck. Some of the different phrases that different people use tend to be associated with them as a broadcaster, and that's kind of the background I came from. So I think the other thing is, the first time I asked a crowd who's ready for Monster Jam, when you get a response like that, well, you're going to do it again, because at the end of the day, you want people to have fun. And the way you know they're having fun is when they're cheering when you ask them a question. So it stuck, and now it's something that everybody does, and that's cool.
With what you do now, how important is research for when you're going on TV or when you're in front of a live crowd? How important is it to do your proper research? It's
critical, and it's one of the things that we teach in all the different training programs that we have. It's hard to be able to go out and talk about this if you don't have an understanding of things. And so things like, how the suspensions work, what a 4-link bar does, the different things, the rules, how they apply. There's a 60-second rule. Okay, how does that work? You've got to be able as a host to explain these things, because a lot of our, we have so many great fans that follow us for years and years, but there's still a lot of people who, I heard that Monster Jam's coming to town. I've never been there before. Let's go see it. And they'll bring the family and come out. We not only want them to have a good time, we need to be able to have them understand what we're doing, so they just don't think, why are these trucks, why are they doing this? That's the host's job, to explain that. You can't explain it if you don't know it. The other thing is that we have a responsibility to our drivers and athletes to tell their stories when they're strapped in and behind the wheel and not telling it themselves, or to ask them the right questions in an interview that will allow them to show their personality, show who they are, bring more fans onto their side, if you will. You can't do that without preparation. You can't do it without research. We encourage, for instance, the first time when a tour starts, we'll have our hosts, they'll do all their research on what's available online. They'll have their stats. But the other thing they will do is sit down individually with each driver or athlete. No microphones, probably have a notebook out so they can take a few notes, but they will just sit and talk for 30, 40 minutes about anything. They might ask what their favorite food is at Taco Bell. They might, talk about what they did last week, what they did, anything. It doesn't have to be truck related. It's meant to get to know a person, and then find out what makes them tick, what makes them interesting, what they're passionate about. Because if we can get that out of them, it's going to make it easier for our fans to relate to them. And at the end of the day, if we have 14 trucks in an event, we'd love to see 14 pockets of fan bases all around, every truck having their own.
Absolutely.
Because we've got great athletes and drivers, and they all deserve their day. So it's up to us as hosts to find out what it takes to make them help them tell their story, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that statement. Now, how many so is that what you used to do also back in the day? You used to sit down individually with the drivers and take notes? So
spend a lot of time with them
for television?
Yeah, and you'd start, you start with the basics. If it's the first time you see somebody, you just walk up and introduce yourself like anybody else and tell them what you're doing, and just start asking basic questions. Where you're from, how long you've been doing it, tell me about your truck. And you find a lot of people are so passionate about what they do, especially those back in the days that I was starting who had literally built their own trucks. You know, a guy like Jim Kohler who still does it. It was pretty easy to get into talking about this truck and what it took because that was their hobby. That's their passion. People love talking about things like that. And so, yeah, it made it pretty easy on my part. But you've got to take the step and get out there and spend the time with them to get that, and then be able to convey it to the fans to make the whole circle come together.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of discontinued trucks. Is there or I don't know if discontinued is the right word, but you know, I used to really love like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Is there any trucks that is no longer running that you really, really liked?
Oh, I don't know. I love the transition and the way that you'll have something for a few years and then maybe it'll transition to something else. And there's a lot of different reasons for those things that, you know, a lot of times are business reasons that I don't even know about. But I like the fact that there always seems to be something new and cool coming. You know, last year, I'm like, what is this Bakugan Dragonoid thing? Yet I see all the cool Spin Master toys they've made out of it, how the kids love it. And then you put a real coming star. We know this kid's going to be a star. We knew it from day one in Camden Murphy in the truck. And you just watch it build and watch the fan base build. So yeah, that's cool. I didn't think that the idea of zombies never hit me. Now, I know a couple of my daughters really love watching these zombie TV shows. I've just never been a zombie guy. But the Feld Entertainment and Monster Jam people just ran an online promotion, and far and away, everybody said, if you're going to create a new truck, it should be zombie. And when they brought it out, just to watch everybody react to it, just reminded me that I don't know everything. There's a lot of smart people involved here. That's not a truck I would have designed. I love seeing it, and I love to see it perform. And I love the way the kids react. And now, especially Barry Musauer has been great, and the other zombie drivers too, about getting the fans to walk around like they have zombie arms when he comes out.
Right.
It's just a fun experience. And that's what we want, is we want the fans to have that. So different trucks, different personalities. Quite often the driver is kind of an extension of that. As we see, has there ever been a better fit of a driver and truck than Canvas Jolly and Monster Mutt Dalmatian? They just seem perfectly made for each other, and she's made a career out of that. That part I love a lot. But I think there's a value to the fact that you know, you never know. There's going to be a new truck coming down, and when there's a couple of new ones come in, probably you won't see a couple others anymore. But that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. You mentioned Barry Musauer. So when I was growing up, or still am growing up, I definitely wanted to be like the first like African American monster truck driver. And then Barry Musauer came on. I was like, dang, because
it's all right. It's all right. We could use more.
But it's always. So talk to me. What's your relationship like with Barry Musauer? I know. I've met him one time in a pit party, and he seemed cool. And do you have a good relationship with him?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what a great guy. You know, Barry is so humble, and I really think has this genuine appreciation for how this has all come together. You got to remember, he took a love of remote control trucks and vehicles and began competing, and got so good that because now we talk about video games, and we have the simulator here that drivers, there are tendencies in any form of this. NASCAR uses simulators as well. So seeing someone who understands control and what Barry was able to do with that RC truck got him noticed enough. And of course, he's a sharp looking fella, speaks well. So it was like, well, you're a good candidate to come down and try out. It just, for him, I know he loved the sport and would have loved any way to get in, but I think to have seen it to come that way, I don't think he's ever lost sight of the fact that he didn't come up into the sport the classic way that 10 years ago people were, but he got the opportunity. He took advantage of it. He's learned from, he never has taken an attitude. He won the first showdown, and he was just as humble then as beforehand. He's always looked to learn from the Toms and the Dennises of the world. He has created his own fan base, and he appreciates them. I just think he's one of the most likable guys you'll ever meet, and he's great for the sport just because he treats people well, and he's one heck of a talented athlete. He can drive a truck.
Yeah, he really is.
He can
Do
drive.
you have a favorite truck?
No, and I can't. And that's why it's funny you say that. We had a big meeting with all of our hosts the other day, and all of our current Monster Jam hosts do a great job of making it exciting and promoting and getting into these stories and being excited. Pick one, Cole Bernard, interviewing Cole Bernard and telling the story about a driver with a prosthetic leg in a battle for a championship right now. What a great story that is. What we talked about, though, is that you have to be able to bring those stories out from an unbiased point of view, because
Right.
you're not going to be a good host for the overall event, the overall show, if you're there to promote one or two trucks or favorite drivers. So I have always looked at all of them as, so if they say, are you a fan? I'm a fan of all of them. And
Hmm.
so, but that doesn't mean that if they've had a bad day that, that I don't go out and ask the question, hey, having a bad day, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Was it hard? Is it at all hard to do that? To
No,
not
no,
show
no,
favoritism?
no, because that's your job. That's your job.
Okay. Okay. And one last thing, because I know
Okay.
you're a pretty busy person.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
didn't realize how time's flying here. Yeah, go ahead. One more.
yeah, yeah. Um, so now looking back at your career, or even though it's not over, but you're kind of done with the announcing for Monster Truck, right? Are you done? Okay, so looking back,
Yep.
you don't have any regrets, right? You love absolutely
No,
what you do.
no. Loved every part of it. I love the people who've been around, and I just love to see this thing continue. Who knows where it's going to go in 10 or 20 years? To have been a small part of its development over these first 30 years that's been the accomplishment of my adult life. So no, it's been awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it. And once
My
again,
pleasure.
congratulations on the Hall of Fame.
Thanks. Good
It's
luck.
it's been
Keep
an
doing
honor.
this, man. Keep doing this, man. You're doing a good job. Love it.
All right, thank you. And for my listeners, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and it will be up whenever. So thank you, Scott, and I will see you later. Good luck.
See you later. Thank you, Micah.